My name is Keegan. I reside in Michigan with my parents. High school was a decent timeline for me, as I had gotten to meet various new people during my time there. Obviously, I also had some people I tended to hang out with outside of school. The only time I really hung out with them was at places like my local community center, where we would work out and play basketball. Back in freshman year, it was getting close to the end of the year, and I was excited for summer break to be coming. I would be starting driver's training, and even start doing a side job to at least begin making money, so I didn't have the fastest start. I had this one friend named Clayton. I would usually hang out with him at least once a week. He was a grade lower than me, his final year of junior high. We were to some extent good friends, and my dad and I even took him to a Detroit Pistons basketball game at one point. He was quite a big basketball fan, so he was more than eager to attend his first game. Despite all the fun activities in the past, it was until I started becoming more busy that he was somewhat beginning to change. He would usually get a bit sad or angry because I'm not free on a specific day. He was the kind of person to have some pretty intense anger issues when he got pissed off enough. I remembered this one day when I told him I wasn't free again, and that I would be home cleaning. It seemed as if he would find the right days where I'm not available to hang out. I didn't check my phone until after I finished cleaning, and I found out that he removed me on Snapchat. I messaged him on Messenger, asking why he got so mad, and why he decided to remove me as a friend. He assumed I was lying to avoid hanging out with him. That thought crossed my mind for a while, and I even followed up with it at times because he was starting to become more obnoxious. On occasion, I would lie and say I'm doing something, going somewhere, or already made plans with another friend. He felt so left out that one day, when the sun had set, he showed up to my apartment I was living in at the time unannounced. I asked him why he didn't text me ahead of time. Nothing. He just stared at me for a few seconds before walking away slowly. Why was he here at this hour? Why didn't he say anything? Why did he just give me this 1,000-yard stare as if I did something to offend him? I hadn't spoken to him the next day. That's also when I turned off my Snap Map on Snapchat to hide my location from him, after he apparently added me back. Some time had gone by, about a month, and he's still the same person, angry or sad when I can't pay him a visit. That's when I got a text from my friend, Nick, who I barely saw in person. He knows Clayton and his ex-girlfriend. Nick had told me some gruesome things about him and what he's done, but my heart dropped as I heard from him and Clayton's ex that he held a knife at his ex-girlfriend's throat and seconded her. I knew that he was a psycho right then and there. I removed him as a friend on all platforms without any hesitation. He texted me on Instagram before I removed him on there too. He blew up my phone with messages asking why I'm removing him. I just told him I needed some time to myself and I would add him back when I'm better, but I used that as an excuse to get away from him. That night, while I was home alone since my parents went to the next town over for dinner with some old friends of theirs, I heard a knock at my apartment door. I looked out of the peephole and no one was there. I opened the door a crack to survey the hallway, but no one. I figured it was someone ding-dong ditching. I figured they wouldn't come back. But when I randomly looked out my bedroom window, the light was burned out by the sidewalk. I noticed a small flash in the corner of my eye, and I thought it was from inside someone's car, but I felt my stomach drop when I saw a tall figure standing in front of my window. It was him. I opened my window and told him to go away, and that I don't want him here. He told me to let him in so he could tell me something. I firmly said no and told him I want him gone, but when he began to move around a bit, I noticed something was in his hand. I couldn't exactly make out what he was holding until he held it up, and when I tell you I was frightened, I felt as if I was going to pass out. Because I shit you not, Clayton was holding a knife in his hand. I told him I was calling the police, but he had already taken off by the time the police had gotten there. I gave the best description of him that I could describe to the cops. I haven't heard a word about or from him since that horrific night. I honestly wouldn't be so surprised if you were trying to kill me while I was home alone. I believe he had murderous intentions. I assumed he probably ended up in juvie after what happened. Not only was I horrified from that experience, but it may have been one of the most traumatic moments of my life. Having your parents gone along with it makes it feel undeniably more unsettling. I'm glad I disconnected all contact from him when I did, because I think if I continued to remain friends with him, I probably could have ended up as one of his endless punching bags, or even worse, dead. This happened in late 2022, when I went on what I thought would be a fun and simple first date with someone I matched with on a dating app. Her name was Emily, and we had been texting for about 2 weeks before deciding to meet up. We both shared a love for horror movies, and when Smile came out, we agreed that seeing it together would be the perfect first date. We picked a weekday night, Thursday. It was a late showing, 10:15 p.m., and at a small, older theater just outside of town. I offered to drive and picked her up around 9:30. She seemed normal, friendly, maybe a little shy. She was quiet for most of the drive, but opened up once we started talking about horror movies we liked growing up. When we got there, the parking lot was almost empty. I joked about how this theater looked like something out of a horror movie itself. Dim lights, flickering neon, and not a single person in the lobby when we walked in. There was only one guy working at the concession counter, and when I asked if it was going to be a full theater, he laughed and said we were the only ones who had bought tickets for that showing. At first, I thought that was great, no crowds, just me, her, and the movie. We went into Theater 6 and chose seats right in the center, about 4 rows from the back. It was freezing in there, which Emily pointed out right away. I offered her my hoodie, and we laughed about how creepy it felt being the only ones in the entire room. We sat back and talked while waiting for the previews to start. I was starting to feel a little chemistry between us, and I figured this would be one of those dates where you actually end up seeing the person again. Then, right before the movie started, like right after the last trailer and just as the lights dimmed lower, I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. Someone walked into the theater. They didn't say anything, or stop to look around, or check their phone for seat numbers like most people do. They walked in slow, straight up the steps, and sat directly behind us. I mean, directly. There were maybe 100 open seats, but he chose the one right behind me. Emily turned to look at him too, and she gave me a weird glance like, really? I kind of chuckled and said under my breath, figures. But right away something felt off. You know that feeling when someone's eyes are burning into the back of your head? That's what it felt like. I glanced back after a minute or two. He wasn't watching the screen. He was staring at us. I only saw him for a split second, but he didn't flinch or look away. He didn't even pretend to be interested in the movie. He was just sitting forward a bit, like someone might do if they were really into a scene, but his face wasn't even turned toward the screen. It was angled right at us. At me. I whispered to Emily, "He's just staring." She nodded slowly and whispered back, "I know." We tried to ignore it for a while. The movie started, and I really did try to get into it, but every few minutes, I'd feel it again. The presence behind us. Not just someone being annoying, this was different. There was an intensity to it, like he was waiting for something. After about 20 minutes, I leaned forward in my seat and turned my head a little so I could glance back more casually. Same thing. He was still staring. He was middle-aged, maybe late 40s. He was clean-shaven, kind of pale, wearing a dark gray hoodie. Something about him just looked empty, like he wasn't even there mentally. His eyes didn't look glazed over like someone who was zoning out. From what I saw, he never blinked. I turned back around and whispered to Emily, "This guy is really creeping me out." She looked genuinely scared now. "Do you want to move?" We considered it, but where would we go? It would still be in the same room, and we were already in the best seats. Moving might make it awkward or even provoke him. A few minutes later, I felt something. The guy breathed on me, not loud or exaggerated. It was soft, but unmistakable. A deep, slow exhale right behind my seat. I spun around, and he was leaning forward over the back of my seat, his face closer than it should have been. I stared at him and said, "Dude, can you not?" He didn't respond. He just slowly leaned back in his seat. That was it. I told Emily, "Let's move." We got up and walked down to the front corner row. It sucked and the angle was bad, but we needed distance. I could barely focus on the movie anymore, just kept glancing back every couple of minutes, and every time I looked back there, he was staring straight at us. He didn't budge. Around halfway through the movie, we heard footsteps. He was coming down the steps. Emily grabbed my arm and we both held still. The footsteps stopped a few rows above us. We didn't turn around. I don't know how long he stood there. I didn't dare look. Then, finally, he walked back up to the top row. I whispered, "We need to leave." She nodded. We grabbed our stuff and slipped out quietly. As we exited the theater and went down the hallway toward the lobby, I glanced back through the glass window in the theater door. He was standing in the aisle now. He wasn't watching the screen. He was just standing there, still staring at us. We went straight to the front and told the concession guy that someone was acting really weird in Theater 6. His smile faded instantly, and he said, "Again?" "What do you mean, again?" I said. And he hesitated, then said, "He's been coming in randomly for like a month. Always late shows and never buys anything. You guys aren't the first ones to complain about him." I responded, "Why hasn't anyone kicked him out?" He looked uncomfortable. He said, "He doesn't technically do anything illegal. Management says unless he touches someone or breaks a rule, we can't really do much." Emily was almost in tears. She asked if someone could walk us to our car. He agreed, and one of the janitors walked us out. The guy didn't follow us that night, at least not that we saw, but the whole ride back, I couldn't shake this fear that he might have written down my license plate, that he might have followed us at a distance, watched us leave, and found out where Emily lived when I dropped her off. For weeks afterward, I was paranoid. My cop friend also told me it was a load of horseshit that they couldn't do anything about him. The theater as a business would reserve every right to kick somebody out. I avoided that side of town for a while. Emily and I talked a few times after that, but never ended up seeing each other again, unfortunately. I think we were both too shaken from what happened. I have not been back to that theater since, though I don't see any reviews on the website about the guy. I wonder just how many people have actually had the same experience.